Hey, I'm here to give you a tutorial on Blender 2.8. We will be focusing on modeling and sculpting in these tutorials. There's a lot of other stuff that Blender can do, but we will not be talking about that necessarily in these videos. Awesome. To get started, you will need a 3-button mouse. My 3-button mouse is super useful. To orbit around my object, I press down on my middle mouse button and click and drag, so I'm pressing down. I can also use my 3-button mouse to pan across, holding down my shift key and again the middle mouse button, and then I get a good view. I can zoom by scrolling in and out. I can deselect by left clicking in this gray area, and I can select by clicking directly on the object itself. And I can delete by right clicking and going down to delete. Awesome. So I just got rid of the cube that automatically is generated when you open up Blender, and I am going to add my own mesh. The mesh is the most common object that you'll be working with in Blender, and I like to start with the mesh and then build as necessary. I'm going to actually add a cone here. My cone is just below the surface line, or some part of it is below the horizon line. As this is an object going to Unity, there are some things that I don't necessarily need to worry about, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it above the horizon line by using my move tool. I'm going to grab this blue arrow, which is for my z-axis, and then pull it above the horizon line. We also see a red arrow and a green arrow. We see that they're the x, y, and z axis. The x and y axis we're familiar with, looking at 2D things on our computer screens. The z-axis is in 3D space, and it allows depth. Cool. If I want, I can also rotate my object. I have a couple options. I can rotate on the x-axis, or I can rotate on the y-axis, or I can just grab this white bar to rotate the object as I select it. Honestly, I think that I am going to rotate my object not by just eyeballing it, but I'm going to go ahead and go over to my contextual window. So there's a bunch of tabs here, and in this case, this contextual window lets me know where my object's located, its rotation, and its scale. So if I want to take my object larger on the XYZ axis, I could put that in here. But here I'm interested in rotating on the Y-axis. I'm going to make it 180 degrees. Perfect. When I put that in there, the cone is the position that I would like it to be in. It's useful to do both. We're doing something creative, so it doesn't always make sense to necessarily put the rotation in. By the way, the ultimate rotation is 360 degrees, so we know that 180 is half of that. Yeah, cool. We can also scale the object. I can scale it individually on either the y-axis or the x-axis or the z-axis. Or I can grab this white bar here and scale it proportionally. I actually don't want to scale it. It's fine as it is. There's also the transform tool, which allows you to, I didn't have my object selected, but it's all of scale, rotation, and move in the same tool. We have some other annotate and measure, which may be useful, but we'll come back to those. Cool, so I have my object. It's just how I like it. I have my contextually sensitive menu that's talking about this object, and I'm going to add another object, and that object is going to be the icosphere. So some things to note, the cursor tool is actually super sophisticated and you can do a lot of cool stuff with it, but since we're beginners, what we're interested in right now is the fact that the objects generate with their center at wherever the 3D cursor tool is centered. You can change that if you want, but I am fine with that because I'm going to move my icosphere up and place it almost like an ice cream cone into this cone here. I do want to scale this icosphere, so I'm going to grab it and make it big. And for the sake of argument, I'm going to leave this object here. I'm going to scale it down just a little bit so that the cone's there, but some part of my icosphere appears on the outer edge. Okay, cool. That's what I want right now. One of the many awesome things that Blender can do is you can use one object to modify another. And you can find the modifiers in underneath the wrench tab here. We have this add modifier. There's 4 categories: modify, generate, deform, and simulate. We are going to be working with the generate. I am going to go over to generate and down to Boolean. It applies a modifier to my icosphere. And I can say, you know, I would like to modify my icosphere using this cone. So I'm going to choose intersect. I will take this eyedropper and select the cone as the object that will modify the icosphere. And then I'll hit apply. Once I hit apply, I get a cone, and then I also get a modified icosphere / ice cream top. A couple things to note, whoopsie, is that where the cone has these edges, that's been applied to my icosphere. Now I would like to use the icosphere, flip it over and put it on my ice cream top, but this isn't exactly what I want because it's been modified by the cone. I'd be better off if instead of using the cone to modify my icosphere, I use a cube, right? There's going to be more surface area in the cube, and that will allow modification without sort of mashing the cone shape onto my object. So I'm going to go ahead and do add mesh cube. I'm going to scale it up because I need it to be big enough for my icosphere. I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to take my icosphere over as well. I'd like to align these 2 objects to make sure that their centers are at the same distance. So what I can do, and this is going to be kind of a leap, is I'm going to use my function key, which on my laptop I have a small FN, and then at the top I have an F3, right, an F3 key. And when I use my F3 key, it brings up a shortcut to searching. So you can search to all of the tools that you can use in Blender. And I'm actually going to look up align and then hit enter. And then look, this align menu pops up here. What I can do is I'd like to align these on the x-axis, and then I can also make sure to align them on the y-axis, and then you can't tell from this particular angle, but it is centered. From here, I'm going to lower, deselect and select my icosphere, and then lower that into my cube, half of this icosphere as my ice cream top. Cool. Now I'm going to go over, and my icosphere still has that modifier. Maybe I'll just close this modifier and let's do it again. Add modifier Boolean. And in this case, I'm going to use my eyedropper to use the cube, and then I'll apply it. And then I get this perfectly sliced icosphere that I can use as a top to my ice cream cone.